But the thing is, every one of these commands, if you run docker build again and nothing has changed in these files, it will cache the result, so it doesn't do it again. Okay?
Yeah.
This one is super expensive, man.
Yes.
Because it installs all the Python dependencies,
Right.
right? And poetry takes 5 million years. So what you often do is you kind of just one of the first things you do is to install the dependencies. And then later what you do is you copy in the source code and build it.
Yes.
Because what happens is if you change the source code, all of the previous steps are cached.
Yes.
So you don't need to do run task install all the time just because the source code file changed.
Yeah, it makes
if
a
I
lot of
would
sense.
copy everything at once, I would be screwed because then I would have to run task install,
Every
task
time,
build.
yeah.
Hello and welcome everyone.
Hi there.
So, welcome to our last lesson. It took a while because I actually got pretty badly sick over the new year.
Yeah.
And yeah, was pretty bad, I must say. So thanks for the patience. I was like a grandpa, like I couldn't walk stairs anymore afterwards because my lungs took so much damage. Most likely a bit of COVID was in it too.
Yeah. That
You know.
sucks, man.
Yeah, that really sucked, man. It was a lovely experience to be sick like that for once. Like I haven't been sick like that in a decade.
Yeah. Yeah, can kick your heart. That's right.
Yeah, and sometimes it's good, to be grounded again.
Yeah. Right. But not too often.
Got it.
Not too often.
I got another week of vacation now. That's
Yeah.
good.
There's a good in everything. You have to just look really, really precisely.
So, what are you drinking?
Yeah, I'm drinking Silver Needle. Really nice. And yeah.
Silver Needle, yeah.
Yeah.
Sucker. Didn't have one in more than a year, I think.
Really? Yeah, next time you're here.
Next time,
Yeah, definitely.
next time I come by, we drink one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just love that.
I'm
Silver Needle is great.
just always smooth, If you brew it right,
Yep.
it's really beautiful taste.
Yeah.
I'm drinking a Pouchon. Most people don't know, but I'm currently on the Azores, from where I will also work a bit this winter for the first time. It's a new experience. And they have a tea farm. Of course, I bought some tea there. And one of the kinds, it's a Pouchon from the name. I forgot the Chinese name. And it's maybe the best they have. They also have some other good teas and stuff, but the Pouchon is really good. And they also have pretty bad teas.
So enough to be grounded, not just the sickness, but also the bad tea.
for the common folks, who don't appreciate good tea.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, nice, man. Yeah, tea farm. That's another topic for my life.
Yeah.
So today we will be looking into, not unfortunately tea farming, even though I would really love to talk about it, but Docker.
Yeah.
So have you worked with Docker, man?
Yeah, a bit. So I worked my first ways around it with hosting my own GitLab instance at work, more or less. So I was the guy having to deal with all that, and I set that up for a small team of non-IT folks, so just engineers. And so I was just hosting that as a Docker image. I really don't know why I did that. So there's also the way to just install it on your Linux machine directly. But I thought, or I heard, that it would be much, much, much easier to use Docker in case you want to update it. And you will update it.
Often like it. It's often like it, actually, that not necessarily also in case of setting it up, because a lot of those more complex hosting solutions, they require so many dependencies in specific versions.
Right. Yeah.
And if it's on your system, you have to upgrade those dependencies yourself. But with a Docker container, it's kind of like, take it all, man.
Yeah.
Thrown in your face.
Yeah. Although we had a virtual machine, which was just dedicated to hosting the GitLab, so it would be, I think, a fairly more easy job to update and maintain it. but still, the process of hosting it with a GitHub container is so much more easy because you have just a single line of code to update it. And by the way, just a little rant about it. I didn't know it, and we made that mistake of not updating GitLab for over 2 years, which is a terrible thing to do, I know, but engineers, not IT folks. So we never did that, and then you had those update paths, and you can really screw those up if you don't know about it. Yeah, you just hit update, and everything goes down to shit, and so that took quite a while. But once I realized how to do this, I got that working pretty quickly, and Docker was really useful there.
Yeah. So as a quick explanation for those who don't know Docker and thoroughly, it's a software solution in order to bundle your applications with, you could say, as an operating system image. It's not like an operating system which will later run, but it looks like a file system where all your dependencies can be installed, and then you can run this in a dedicated process, usually on certain on your machine with the Docker runtime, which will take care of it to run it kind of isolated and separately. And that's really nice because I put this meme here on, but it's really often, you have stuff around your application, like even if you have Python, nowadays they got better, but in the past you had to have certain libraries with certain versions, for example, the Intel math kernel library and that stuff. And always you have to have stuff like this in certain versions on your system. And that can be really a pain in the butt.
Yep.
And to alleviate that, of course, you can just bundle all of that into the Docker image file system. And then you're done, right? You just ship the Docker image, and what you can bundle everything in, whatever you need in whatever versions. And then people can just use the image and never bother about the complexity of installing everything in the right order. And it's surprising, but in Python applications, it's also often like it. That you have this difficulty, I would say, to have the right versions. Because especially if you interface with different libraries, I would say, and not all like operating system libraries and that stuff.
Yep.
Or sometimes I also had that a tool was dependent on or a library which I compiled was dependent on a system library. And it was also present, of course, on the target system, but in the wrong version. So you can imagine what happened at some point. It did a dynamic call and just crashed.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah.
And it's hard to catch, I think. Such errors.
Yeah,
they're hard.
That's more a professional problem. Like, you don't have that in that magnitude until you started using it.
Yeah.
There are other solutions for using Docker, actually. Like Wasm has become more popular as an alternative, but that's a different story, I would say. Yeah, but it's really mostly Docker is about shipping all the shit around your software solution with it, and to make sure that it has the respective versions, so that stuff really runs.
Right.
So yeah, but it's not an operating system that runs. That's quite important. I think in the past it was like it that Docker could actually run on a VM, a real virtual machine, and then it could run. Also, you could run in Linux containers on Windows and vice versa. But the default implementation is usually that it just runs stuff in a different process with the Docker image under the hood. Yeah.
But
so that's roughly what it is.
By the way,
for people out there,
a small tangent on this. We discussed lately about NeoVim and app images. Is that kind of the same thing, but with a different mechanism?
I do not have enough understanding of app images. I would have to look at it, I must say.
Just because I just read that it is a way to install it without properly installing it on your system. It runs in its own instance, more or less. So I just was wondering if that would be the same. Yeah, but yeah.
I would have to check it.
All right.
But I'm pretty certain it's not the same, because app images are much lighter if you ever use them. Docker containers really need some time to start up in that stuff.
All right, yeah.
So I highly doubt that, just from the user experience I have between both of them, that it does the same.
All right. Yeah, could be. So it's more or less
whatever abstraction they make, it's much lighter in app images.
Yeah, right. That makes sense.
Okay. So, the thing why Docker is so important is, Manu, also, you will rarely get a job if you don't know Docker. Like, let's be honest, even if you're a really good Python programmer,
it's just
because this is usually the interface you have. Like, people are usually running Kubernetes clusters or whatever, and then you need a container to bundle your Python application at least and that stuff. And usually then the DevOps people take over once you have this Docker container bundled and created. But like, if I hire someone, this is kind of like a minimum I would still like to see nowadays, to be able to create Docker containers. It's also not difficult. It's really stupid forward. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay. So
Docker.
Let's go forward into the dirt, man. Yeah, I enlisted here very difficult. What Docker does? It builds images and it runs.
Yeah, as simple as that. Yeah.
Yeah, the most silliest list, but yeah, whatever.
Well, it has more than 1 point, so it's not the stupidest list which ever existed.
Yeah. And with the Docker images, by the way, they are like an operating system, but they are not running the operating system really. It's more like the file system underneath where the stuff is in. It's really important to know, because sometimes in Linux, for example, you have systemd running to manage a lot of stuff in the background. It's not running in the container.
Yeah.
Or cron jobs and that stuff, like the cron daemon is also not running in its stuff. So it's you need to be aware that it's not an operating system running. It's kind of like your application in a process in an isolated environment, running on top of your operating system.
Is the allocation of things dynamic here? So it allocates for sure some memory and maybe also some threads from the processor. Is that dynamic?
You can limit it.
You can limit. Okay.
It depends. It depends. Like, you can give it limitless, but usually what you have to do, especially on Kubernetes, when you run an image, is you have to, at least in our company, you have to limit the RAM.
Yeah.
You can give it a starting RAM, and you can allow it to grow to a certain limit, and you can even limit the CPU. You can give it half a CPU if you want to.
Yeah.
So
sense.
Good question, man. It's true. You can limit it, and it makes sense, because otherwise some applications will just go rampage or something. You always want to have limits in place.
Right. Also bandwidth. I just saw that here with network, right? So.
Yeah, I never limited the bandwidth though, I must say. This is really not something I touched, but I think you should be able, the ingress controller anyway should be able to limit the bandwidth. Yeah, so that's basically it. But running Docker containers, you don't need to necessarily run them in Docker. There are different solutions building on top of it. And also to build it, like you can actually build Docker containers with a solution, for example, called Canico, which is a solution from Google, which I won't go into detail what they do differently, but just that you know, building a Docker container does not necessarily happen with Docker itself. Canico was more for the case where you build Docker containers in a Docker container and stuff like this, and it has some other advantages. So it
sounds
a
little bit crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on there, and once you start using it, at some point you will come across this stuff, So it's don't worry too much. Just start using it, and if you don't need other stuff, then be happy. And in case you get into trouble, you will find this other solutions. I think you already know Docker files, right? Like everything to create a Docker image is in this file called Docker file. We have it here in our project. It's the same. Usually you start off with some image. Here it's the famous Python 3.11 image. 3.11 is maybe a bit bold here, but it worked, fortunately. It's pretty young out, so Yeah, living on the edge, man. Like I tried to update today my Conda Python environment, and in the Conda environment does not have 3.11 yet.
Yeah,
it's strange.
Yeah.
At least not in the core, in the Conda Forge channel.
Yeah.
It's so strange.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah. Why I give this builder, I will tell later, but you basically just say, okay, I start from this image. You can also give it Ubuntu double point latest or something like it. I really like Ubuntu. Here's also a big war, very important. You need to upload your image later, and that takes a lot of time, especially if you use something like Ubuntu, because there's everything on top of it. But on the other hand, if you take something like an Alpine image, which is the absolute bare minimum contrast to it, then you also end up making your process down here much more complicated often, because you need to install 50 million dependencies, and Alpine uses a different standard library, or a C standard library, because it's lighter, and that makes it even more worse.
Balance again.
So usually I recommend just take a comfort image. Don't go too crazy for the small ones, that you say, oh, I want minimum. If it takes a lot of time for you to take an Alpine image or something, I can just go with Ubuntu, and you're gonna be a very happy person. Yeah. Okay. Then Workday just kind of creates a steer and puts you into it, so easy peasy, nothing special. Then Python is already installed in this. That's quite nice, so I don't need to do this. But then you just run commands and copy stuff over. So that's the whole deal. How you create that image is basically take an image, sometimes create some directories or whatever you feel like, and run certain commands to install stuff and copy stuff over. And here we install Poetry, we install Task. That we have it, we copy over our task file from our project directory to the app dir. The dot here is the /app, basically. Then we copy over the project dependencies and install them. And this is very important, Manu. Why do I copy over the dependency, the dependent py project and the poetry.log and install it here? And why do I not simply copy everything at once?
Everything at once, you mean that you just also copy the installed things? Like,
for example, here I copy the source code. But I could also just
you have copied it.
I could also just copy all of this at once. I could just say, okay, copy everything in my project folder over in one step and be done with it. Why do you think I don't do that?
Well, what you do in between is the task install. So by doing that, you would generate a new poetry log file. I'm not sure why.
Not exactly, but you're pretty close to it, man. It's a bit of Docker experience, but the thing is, every one of these commands, if you run docker build again and nothing has changed in these files, it will cache the result, so it doesn't do it again. Okay? This one is super expensive, man, because it installs all the Python dependencies, right? And Poetry takes 5 million years. So what you often do is you kind of just one of the first things you do is to install the dependencies, and then later what you do is you copy in the source code and build it. Because what happens is, if you change the source code, all of the previous steps are cached. So you don't need to do run task install all the time just because the source code file changed. If I would copy everything at once, I would be screwed, because then I would have to run task install,
every
task
time,
build. And it would take eternity, man. And this is a common trick they do in also with other programming languages from time to time, to copy the dependencies first, install them in a Docker image, and then later, in another step, do actually the source code and build it.
Yeah, makes total sense. This is the default option, right? So there's no switch you have to flip that it will cache the values. So it will definitely cache.
No, it's all automatic. It's always on.
Yeah, perfect.
You can force it to rebuild it, force to that it needs to install everything and that stuff. That's also possible, of course. But yeah, it's no fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's really no fun because building images takes 5 million years if you can really be long. Okay, so this one here just copies over the source code and then it builds it, so nothing special. This one creates the Python wheel. And now this is also a really cool trick. You saw up here, why the heck, what is going on? I had from Python this one here, and now I have it again.
Yeah.
Right? It's, why? Now the trick is, we create now a clean image. So here, in this image here, we kind of built the project, right? The source code. And what you often do is, for example, if you have C++ applications, you have a lot of trash lying around when you build source code. Also here you have trash because we installed actually the development dependencies, the dev dependencies, right? And we don't want that shit on the system usually.
Yep.
So what you can do is you can start a new and just copy over from the builder image. Here you see the name as builder, and here you see it copy minus from builder.
Yeah.
I just copy over the Python wheel and just install it. And by that, I have the absolute bare minimum on my system.
Nice. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, that's a neat trick. It's not so bad for Python necessarily, even though it's also cluttering it up.
Yeah.
But it's really, really bad if you have, like I said, C++ and you need to build multiple stuff and you have object files all over the place. And to clean that up is a hell, man. Sometimes it's just easier to toss it all away and just pull over the binary you need.
Right.
And here it's kind of the same, you know. It's just the wheel we are taking, which is the barest minimum, and in it the dependencies will then be installed here automatically.
By the way, I think that fixes also something which I came across with Task, because in one of my other side projects I had a problem that if you have Task and then command line arguments, and you would use Windows and you would use backslashes, Task would throw shit at you and just not work, right? But then I uploaded it to PyPy and installed it with PyPy, then run it with PyPy, and backslashes were no problem anymore. So there is something in between converting that to a binary, and that makes Task behave a little bit different. So then it will accept backslashes. So I think when you're doing this, or if you would not do it the way you're doing it here, then you would use it with the normal GitHub kind of behavior, right? Not with the wheel. And with the wheel, you should get all the binary benefits. So I think that makes total sense from that perspective as well. To just use it with the wheel. Yeah.
What I often do for Golang, for example, is just build it somewhere.
Yeah.
In the previous step, and then copy just the binary over, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the last point, of course, is easy. That's the entry point. The entry point here is simply a Death Star, which is the CLI name.
Yes.
So once we run this step, the CLI is available in the system under Death Star. And then the API command, which we had in a previous lesson to start the API action. And that's it. You can also override this entry point. So sometimes if you are not sure or stuff doesn't start as it should, as I had before, also in this lesson, I must say, because I screwed something up. What I simply did was you can run it with docker exec -it minus entry point. You can give it then most of the time /bin/bash that you go into a shell simply. And then you can simply see what's really going on inside if stuff is really installed and stuff. So that's really easy. You can override this entry point, just that you know. But if you don't specify anything, this entry point will start.
Yeah, makes sense.
And building stuff is fairly easy then. You just run docker build. You don't need to specify -f docker file. I just like to do that because it's a good habit to give it the file. And give it a tag too. I will get to that in a second, but this is the container registry where we are gonna upload. And this is then the name. The name here is a bit wrong. I need to correct it. I see there's the repository owner missing here. /repository owner /Death Star. GHCR is the GitHub container registry, which I would really recommend because In the past, people uploaded everything to Docker Hub, which is always public, by the way, if you don't pay. And I like the GitHub container registry because it makes sense if you make releases and have binaries on GitHub and stuff like this, that you also upload your containers right next to it.
Yeah, everything in one place. Also the docs are there.
Yeah, everything in one place.
Yeah.
And also you can tailor the access restrictions with your GitHub token.
Right.
So in case you're in company or something, you kind of know then, okay, a person has access to my repo, then they also have access to the container in case they need to do something with it. So it's really nice to have everything bundled together.
Yep.
So a little big favorite of mine in GHCR. Yeah.
And people can also...
There's a dot here.
Yeah, go ahead.
By the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, people can also?
People can also use those containers then to build their own containers on top of it, like you did with the Python 3.11, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Also makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it. And there's a dot here, which is the context. The context is basically, we do here some copy operations, like copy pyproject.toml.
Yeah.
But the question is...
Where to?
Where is it lying? And the dot is basically, it's the working directory. It's called the context. And people sometimes forget to specify it and they get really weird error messages. But it's also nice because you can put this Docker file. You don't need to have it here in this directory. You could make a subdirectory and have it there and run it still from a higher level, because you can specify the working directory all the time. It's really nice to have a bit this distinguished with the context, and this is a mandatory argument though. So this dot here is hiding in plain sight, but it's mandatory. The rest here is optional. You don't need to tag, you don't need to give the Docker file, but you need to give the context. Yeah. We can build it quickly. I see I had it already running. Aye. It doesn't want to zoom in. What a naughty little console. Wait, let's go twice in. Sometimes I need to do it by manually. It's so weird. Okay, we have our task. So I think I already ran the build step. Yeah, you see it's already... Everything is cached. And I don't want to run it without cache. No, it takes an eternity. But it kind of runs through. This is how it looks like. And in the end, it's happy. And it built it. And it tagged it. What also many people do is, here I tagged it with the name. Here you see is the tag is now correct. And here's the version also, and which is latest. This is one of the favorites to just call the latest version always latest.
Right.
But very important, what many companies do, including, for example, we at work, we give it multiple tags. Here, for example, we have then latest, and we have the version ones, I don't know, 1.2.4 or something, and then we could still have one or more, two more of versions or something.
Okay.
And the thing is, if you upload it, the container registry usually knows duplications. So it doesn't bother if you give it multiple names,
Okay.
It's just multiple names later. It realizes, understands it, and it's not like you upload stuff 4 or 5 times. So that's pretty neat to know and good to know because, usually you have latest and the version specifically. And one of the things is, Manu, do you think latest is a good idea?
I don't know. No. Personally, I don't think it's such a good idea because... Like, if you're just running on the latest, isn't it the same as with the code itself? You should have your dev tree and then pushing onto them, and then you release, and then you would have some version, and that would be a number, and then you put your latest tag on whatever you would want to, right? But I don't think it's a good idea to use latest in your environment.
Yeah, it's absolutely not a good idea, man. Like, we had several times where out of laziness or fun, we tagged stuff with the latest at work.
Yeah.
Maybe also because it was not important, but it became important later on. And we had actually really that at some point stuff just didn't work anymore.
Yeah.
And then you start looking and then you figure out, and these are ones of those really funny things. You figure out at some point that, of course, the owners updated the version and stuff broke. So latest is really not not to be recommended when you have production running software. Always specify the version specifically.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Here I just did it because, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So I put the stuff into the task file here, so people can look this up. It's fairly easy though, how it looks like. The same with running it. We can also do that. So the command is fairly easy. You just have docker run. Then we need to forward the port. The container itself is isolated from the network, so we need to forward port 8080 from the container because that's where our application runs to port 8080 on our operating system. And then here, of course, is the same the Docker image name. I just have it in variables, so it's a bit more. Then I can just run it here and we can check if it works. But yeah, you see, and now the API is available out of our Docker container, which is pretty neat.
Nice.
Yeah. So this is basically how it is, you know. As you also see the logs here and that stuff, and you can of course then also terminate it again, and that's it. So really, really, really nice and easy. And this is really what makes it so cool, because if someone of course took the hustle to make the Docker build stuff, you know, like with your GitLab and stuff, you just do Docker run and you don't have to worry about stuff inside.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's super. It's really, really nice. How would you pass in secret into a Docker container? Do you know?
No, but I would think of files, encrypted files, maybe.
Files is one way. Sometimes it's done like it. Most of the times it's actually just environment variables. You can specify environment variables. Environment variables, because it just is not on a file system, so it's not harder tangible, you know. But some stuff like Kubernetes config or stuff, it needs to be in the file system. So that's another deal. Yeah. So also good to know, and you can also mount stuff in. You can mount in files, you can mount in directories, whatever you feel like.
What it just got me wondering is about, because it's so easy to just use it, right? Has it ever been really badly exploited? Like that you would distribute some malicious code via a Docker image, which could then change something on the system with mounting, right?
Most definitely. Like there are also security hardened Docker images. So if you have a security dependent or security related application, you really need to be careful if you bundle it, because there's a whole file operating system file system underneath.
Yeah.
And they could swap out stuff there. So and you also need to regularly, like at our company we have scans. We regularly scan the images and we see what vulnerabilities the images have before we use them.
That makes total sense. Yeah.
But no one is usually that thorough to read it in detail and just gives a shit for most stuff.
Yeah, but blast of virtual machines, right? If it goes to shit, we just restart it. But yeah, I don't know. So I just think because it's so easy, it would be such a good entrance for every hacker or Trojan horse or so to just jump on that, get a Docker file, which is fairly common, change something in there.
Imagine how many CVEs Python libraries usually have, or Node.js libraries, and then imagine on top of it Docker with a whole operating system stack. Like, that's insane. There's so many holes in there.
Yeah.
It's a bit better with WASM though, because in WASM you can limit at least networking and stuff. Also in Docker kind of, so it's not as bad as it looks like, but it's still pretty bad.
Okay. Yeah. So easy, but also cautious. Both.
Yeah.
Both.
So once we build it, to upload it, you first need to log in. Here this is the command for you to log in. You need to do that manually. I won't do that for you. It will ask for a password. There you need a GitHub token. I wrote that here with read-write access to packages. And afterwards you're ready to go. And then you can I have a task command again here, but it's basically just docker push and then the image name. So it's really stupid as hell. And you see it tries to upload it here, but it says kind of already a layer already exists. So it doesn't upload anything because it knows it's already uploaded and it hasn't changed. What does layer already exist mean, by the way? The layers are... I'm in the wrong directory. Where is it? The layers are basically these ones here. These commands here. Every one which changes something is a layer.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of indirectly what it does, and it checks if anything has changed in the different layers, and it does nothing. So it's happy as hell. And that's it. How it works.
Yeah.
Usually you don't upload it by hand, of course. I put in a GitHub action workflow where it does it automatically, and what a part of it is also to get the right version. Like what you can do with Git is with Git you can get kind of the like one of the arty things is you want to have automatic names for the Docker images after the double point, right?
Right.
So you don't want latest.
Yes.
Where is it? Frickin' hell. Where is it? I don't see it. I think it was here in the console. But you don't want latest, but you want here some version. And what also often happens is they combine it, like they make the branch name or something. Or they make the branch name and the commit hash or just a commit hash. There is a bit depending on where you work. And they do that automatically then, so you can play around with stuff if you like to. And to kind of compose this version, it's a bit an artsy thing because you can do that manually in many ways. There's no standard way really. And here it's kind of using an action to extract metadata, it's called. But by that they figure kind of out, which names to give. And that's it then afterwards, you know. So here kind of like this follow-up step where they really build and push it in this action. They use the output from the metadata, the tags and the labels. So you don't have to bother about it.
Yep. That makes sense.
Yeah, just that you know a bit about it. So we could also use task here to do what we did previously, but I didn't want to do this manually, I must say. I was a bit lazy. But usually you do this in a fashion which is standardized in your company to kind of say which... I don't know, on the dev branch, we usually have just develop and a commit hash or something combined. Yeah. Like that's pretty common for most branches. But then you have, for example, release branches too, and on main and whatever, you know, there are different ways. And when you tag the image really and there's really a tag, then you want to have the version, you know. So there's a bit of playfulness in this. How do you name stuff?
Yeah.
But beyond that, it's fairly easy, you know. There's really no complication. And this is what I really love about Docker is it's stupid as hell, man. I mean, you just take a operating system image you could call. You just install stuff in the right order, and it's a bit an art to get stuff in the right order. But let's be honest, this is not really a complication.
No.
There are a lot of tricks also around it. And then, you just basically run your applications or your containers somewhere, wherever it will be. And that's it, you know, that's really stupid as hell.
Yeah, and it's also so automated. So if you specify that with the workflow, it listens on you tagging it, and then you have already the right container uploaded. So, yeah, just one thing once set up, you don't have to worry about too much.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. And the thing is always funny because at some point you need to set up a Docker container again, and you have forgotten half of the things you did last time.
Yeah.
So you just go into some other workflow files where you get the build commands, and you could just copy everything over, and that's it. It's funny, man. It's getting so dark.
Yeah, I was just saying about getting romantic.
I can't
candles.
I can't reach the. Yeah, I can't reach the button because my dog is on my lap. So but I have a candle here and lighters. So I will make now a bit of romantic light.
Yeah, Docker romance. Yeah.
This is Docker romance, man. So silly.
Yeah. Yeah, but nice. I mean, that's so cool. I mean, Docker seems like one of the most least amount of work you have to put into, but you get a huge benefit out of it. So I think it's just easy to it's just straightforward to just do it, learn it, apply it, and a few times and then.
Another cool trick I want to tell you, it's more for the pros when you have really complicated tech stacks, which some of our applications have.
Yeah.
You see here in this workflow that runs on Ubuntu latest, right? What you sometimes do is, if you look at this, we install Python, we install task, we cache dependencies and other stuff.
Yeah.
You know, like this can take an eternity.
Takes a few minutes.
And what we sometimes do is we kind of create something like a base image for a repo.
Yep.
So it's another workflow. It usually runs once a week, or when we trigger it manually, or when certain files get updated, like the Docker file itself.
Yeah.
And what it does is it basically uploads a new image, and this workflow here then just uses this image. And what you then have as advantage is all of these installation steps you can kick out.
Yeah, right.
And that
makes
huge.
Sense.
That's really huge.
Yeah.
Because you save yourself a ton of time in certain circumstances. So this is a little trick I want to also mention here still, is that in workflows, if it takes too long to install stuff and whatsoever, and it's annoying as hell, you can create custom base images, it's called, just and run your workflow based on them where everything is already installed. That's pretty good practice.
Yeah, that's a nice way. So it's just don't use Docker for your own code, but just you create this base image which has all the dependencies you would want to have normally, more or less, and then you just use that as a test environment. Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, in your pipeline. So you don't have to install in every pipeline run everything.
Yeah.
Which, think about it. I mean, you install task and Python in every run.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, even if I just switch computers and I have to just install the virtual environment once again, I'm get annoyed because it takes that long. And if you just imagine yourself doing that over and over and over and over again on your virtual machine, well, you don't see it, but it's still happening. So I think, definitely saves you a ton of time.
I mean, look at this. This is still okay, but here stuff runs around a minute.
Yeah.
A minute in the pipeline it's okay. A minute for a pipeline job which is running is okay, but
it's a simple program with not that much dependencies, right? But it will explode.
But you could crush this down. Like sometimes with the trick I just explained to you, you can crush this down to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Because if you look inside what takes time, install dependencies, 47 seconds.
Yeah, right.
Even I used the caching action. But you see here, for example, cache not found. I had a little bit of trouble there. And what you can, with the base image setup, you can kind of also circumvent this cache. So it just installs the diff. Even if you add something, you're always safe. And this goes down to just a few seconds and you're done. Linting, for example, is just 5 seconds. So imagine you start just at lint. That's amazing.
Yeah. And the amount of times you will do this will pay off quickly.
Yeah, it pays really off. So a really cool trick.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know.
Yes. So that's it. Enough. We have tagged the last lesson.
Yeah.
Maybe we make a little goodbye video.
Yeah, I think so.
I think
the course deserves that, definitely.
Yeah, candlelight video then.
Yes. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
So,
in this case, thanks again for watching, listening, and if you like the video, please like, subscribe, and if there's any questions, you know what to do. Comment or write us on GitHub, or come on to our Discord channel. But thanks again for watching, and with the best wishes.
See you soon.
Bye.